to share the screen for the beginning verse of this Maimah, this discourse that we're going to be looking at with the help of Hashem. So this discourse was taught in 1964, and it was Parshat Noah. And there is a link. Well, I mean, the Sedra is about the flood. And there's a verse in the Song of Songs, the last chapter, chapter 8. Mayim rabim lo yuchlu lechabot et ha'ava. Many waters cannot extinguish love. Unaharot lo yishtafua. Rivers will not sweep it away. Im yiten ish et kol hon beito ba'ava. If a person tries to give all the wealth of his house for love, in other words, against love, boz yavuzulo, they will make fun of him, they'll ridicule him. No money in the world can buy love. So can cancel out love. So the love, the love is something that will survive everything. Well, Song of Songs is a parable, a mashal. It's a parable which the sort of the exoteric side of it is about the love between a man and a woman, and the esoteric side, which all the Jewish commentators see it in this way, is that it is about the love between God and the individual, God and the Jewish people. And so this is about the love that a person has for God. And even great waters cannot extinguish this love. That's the focus. The great waters cannot extinguish this love, cannot quench it. And then comes the question, what are the great waters? So the discourse that we're going to look at explains the great waters as being the problems and anxieties of daily life. If a person's a businessman, there are worries in business, other aspects of life, that there are things to worry about, and those worries, those anxieties put us off, or might put us off our love for the divine. But the promise of this verse is that our love for the divine is so strong that it survives all these other pressures, and we are able to express our love for the divine. So the discourse talks about feelings of love for the divine, particularly in the process of prayer, which is a moment when the individual is able to express his or her passionate love for the divine. So let's see if we can find the melody of the Maimah. Right, I hope you were able to hear that melody.
Yes.
Yeah, it came over loud and clear. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, I can never tell. Okay, so here we have this discourse. And the discourse was edited by the Rebbe. Discourse was edited by the Rebbe and was included in Likutei Sichot, volume 5, and one of the earliest volumes. But it's actually a discourse. So it was included there as if it was a Sicha, but it was actually a discourse. Now, and it's a very famous discourse. Mayim rabim lo yuchlu lechabot et ha'ava. Many waters are not able to extinguish the love. Unaharot lo yishtafua. Rivers cannot wash it away. Umavar Rabbeinu Hazaken. Now, Rabbi Shmuel Zalman, called the Alter Rebbe, the first great teacher of Chabad, he explains the Torah or the Pashatenu in his book Torah or, which was the Torah of Light. It's actually a book that was edited by his grandson, but he explains there. It's called the Hasidic Sedra. The Hasidic dimension of the Sedra of the week is Rabbi Shmuel Zalman's discourses about it in the book Torah or and Likutei Torah. So he explains there, Shemaim Rabim, the many waters, Heim Kol Tirdot HaPanasa, they're all the worries about making a living. V'hamachshavot she'binyanei olam hazeh, and thoughts concerning this world. So a person may well have many problems making a living, or he or she might be involved in some other project, might be an academic project, which takes a lot of thought and a lot of it's very complex, and the person's thinking about it all the time. Ve'im kol zeh, despite this, lo yuchlu lechabot et ha'ava, these thoughts cannot extinguish the love for the divine. Shehi bechinat ha'ava musuteret, that is the hidden love. Sheyesh b'chol nefesh miYisrael b'teva, which there is in the heart of every Jew by nature. That's a principle of that is a principle of Chabad thought, that every Jew basically has a deep love for God. And if we meet a Jew, as unfortunately we might often do, who doesn't seem to express that, it's hidden, but it's there somewhere. And there are different ways or different situations in which it might suddenly be revealed. So, and part of the approach of Chabad to society as a whole is to try to help that love be revealed in people. So, and similarly, similarly, there's the love of God to the Jewish people. So there is a special love. The Jewish people, God indeed cares about all humanity and all of existence. He created everything and he cares about everything. But there's a special relationship with the Jewish people. They are Am HaNibcha, the chosen people, Am Sgula, various ways this is mentioned in the Torah. They are the ones who got the Torah, and they have the duty to transmit that to the world. And so they have this special connection, like a nation of Kohanim, a nation of priests, as it says in the chapter where we receive the Torah in Sedra Yitro, Exodus chapters 19 and 20. So there we have the love of the individual to God and the love of God to the individual. V'hamayim rabim anal, and these many waters, lo yuchlu lechabota, cannot extinguish this love. Miliyota tamid b'fchinat ava, the love is always burning, as it were, in expressing this love. Now comes an interesting point. And in fact, on the contrary, through these many waters, the service of the person becomes greater. That's why the many waters are called the waters of Noah. Now, this waters of Noah, this phrase, the waters of Noah, is from Isaiah chapter 54. And that is actually the Sedra, the Haftorah, this coming Shabbat. This coming Shabbat, the Haftorah is going to be from this passage in Isaiah. And it mentions there the waters of Noah. So Noah is like the name of Noah, who is the hero of this week's Sedra, where there's the flood and Noah makes the ark and so on. And that's what it means in the Haftorah. It's talking about the waters of Noah. It's like a reference back to the flood. And it calls the flood the waters of Noah. Now, here, this is interpreted in a different way. The word Noah, milashon naicha derucha. The word Noah means comfort of the spirit. In fact, that is really the background to the name Noah, as it says in the Torah, or at least in the commentary on the Torah, that the name Noah means comfort. It's comforting God. God was upset with the whole world. That's why he brought the flood. But Noah comforted him, and that's the special nature of the name Noah. And so the waters, they're called the waters of Noah, which means the waters of comfort, kevan sha'al yadam, because through those waters, na'aset tosefet ilui, there comes something greater in the service of the individual and the divine. And this is really a universal concept, although it's phrased here in terms of the Jew and God, but it's really something universal, that every individual faced by the difficulties of life is able to go beyond those difficulties. And because they go beyond those difficulties, beyond that challenge, they achieve something much more than they would have had if they didn't have the difficulties. Uchamashal, line 15, Uchamashal hayadua, as in the well-known parable, image, hamavor b'makom acher, which is explained elsewhere. Mimayim holchim. Now here we're looking at the metaphor has changed. The water flowing along is here the positive subject. But then, instead of the negative, right? Up to now, the water has been the flood, which is a problem. Here we're talking about water, which is positive, and it's flowing along. But there's something in the way. When there's a dam in the way, when there's a blockage, which prevents the flow of the water. So in this case, the metaphor has like changed round. What we were calling the many waters before is now the dam, the stoppage, which doesn't allow the water to flow. Hine sof kol sof, what happens at the end is, when there's a lot of water and it gets more and more pressure against the dam, not only does the water break through the blockage, on the contrary, in fact, through the blockage itself, now the passage of the water through this hole, through the blockage, is now with greater pressure. Until the blockage itself is now zoremet imamayim, is pouring with the water, umosifa betokef, and is adding in a powerful way halichat hamayim, the positive flow of water. So you see the metaphor has changed, that it's the water which is the good thing, and the blockage which is preventing it, but ultimately, despite the blockage, and even because of the blockage, the pressure of the water is now greater, and it flows through with strength. Yes, like you see a river flowing along, and then you come to a series of rapids. So the rapids are, in a sense, a kind of a blockage of the water, but then it becomes water flowing very fast, hence the name rapids, and it becomes white water with the whole idea of white water sports, whereas the higher up the river, it's just the river flowing along. So it doesn't have that same energy that the white water has as a result of blockage by rocks which are in the way. And similarly, if we go back to our original image, if we go back to the idea of the concealment caused by the many waters of the anxieties of daily life, whether it's business, the academe, whatever it might be, that's political issues in the yeshiva, whatever a person is doing in their daily life, there's always room for anxieties and problems. And that's this water, this many waters which threaten to extinguish the love, in general, dekai al nefesh habahamit bichlal. In general, that means the animal soul, which is involved with the world, v'te'edot hapanasa bifrat, and especially the anxieties of making a living, shedavka al yadam, and it's in fact through them, specifically, dafka. There's no real English translation for dafka. Eve might have a suggestion, but dafka through them, that's how the soul reaches the level of love with all your might. You see, in the Shema prayer, there are 3 levels of love. You should love the Lord your God b'chol levavecha, with all your heart, or b'chol nafshecha, with all your soul, or b'chol ma'adecha, and with all your might. And Hasidic teachings explain that the word might here means going beyond, in some way, a much more powerful and deeper love. So, trying to adjust the camera a bit. So this is the first section of this discourse. I'd like to stop and make sure that we're all on board and that we can understand what it's saying. Are there any comments? Any questions? Hi, Nicole, and hi, Chesed. Nice seeing you. And hello, Ophir. Any comments? No? Everyone agrees? So, all right.
I have a question, if I may.
Yes.
I was wondering, with the Sfirot and the Kabbala tree of life, so obviously the one on top of the head is Keter. So with the Mamno that you were just explaining, with the water and the blockage, which Sfira would that be on the Kabbala tree of life, if it relates to one of them?
In the way he's explaining it here, it's not specifically about the chain of Sfirot in the tree of life. The chain of Sfirot.
But can you connect them? Yeah.
Well, he's not doing that. He's talking about the way in which the spiritual dimension of the person is blocked by the materiality of life. So that's the concealment of being in the world. And therefore, the fact that we're in the world, there are various kinds of concealment, and he's talking about that. So
the metaphor that's being used is water.
Yes, but
so I'm asking which is a Sfirot is associated with water.
He's not speaking in those terms. Water. When studies, one has to take the discourse the way that it's speaking at that particular moment. You might have another discourse which says that water represents the Sfira Chochmah or something like that. That's fine, but There's no point in going from one image to another unless that's the way the discourse takes it. We saw just now, for example, the discourse took the metaphor water and changed it so that suddenly the water was something positive instead of something negative. So it's a matter of following the thought of the discourse itself. What is the discourse trying to teach us? That's really what we are trying to understand, not us trying to make some sort of connection here, there, unless that's a way that we understand better what the discourse is about. Okay, so let's go back and see a bit more. Right. So now the thing is, how do we get to that situation that we are not bothered by the many waters? Now the path to this. Not only that the many waters won't extinguish the love, but on the contrary, the many waters, all the problems of life, the anxieties, are going to arouse a deeper love. Now, how do we manage to do that? Tevah. How do we do it? Well, how did Noah do it? Noah went into the ark. Now, this word, this phrase, bo ela teva, come into the ark, it's from this week's Sedra, and it's about Noah being told by God to go into the ark, him and all the animals, 2 by 2. This very deep story. It's true that it's popularized as a kind of children's toy and different things like that, but it's a very deep story about existence. And the fact that Noah goes into the ark, and he is there, and his wife and his 3 sons and their wives, and there are the animals as well. So they are going into the ark. Now, long ago, the Baal Shem Tov commented on this phrase, go into the ark. And he commented on it because, in this way, because the word Tevah means ark, and it also has another meaning. It means word. Come into the word. And that word is very interesting. Now, which word is it? In the Baal Shem Tov, if I'm not mistaken, I didn't actually look it up just now, but it's from his, it's collected in Keter Shem Tov, and it's, I think it's number 69 in the additional section of Keter Shem Tov, but it's, or maybe it's section 9. But it speaks there about the word of Torah and Tefillah. Hold on one second. I'd just like to get the actual book just to make sure that what I'm saying is right. So here we have Keter Shem Tov. So this is a collection of the Baal Shem Tov's teachings as they were edited around 1790 something. One second. They're culled from, it's section 9. They're culled from early books which were printed, such as the books of Rabbi Yaakov Yosef of Polonoia and other books. So books printed before the 1790s, the editor of Keter Shem Tov selected various sayings that were written in these earlier books in the name of the Baal Shem Tov and put them together. So he says, through the letters of Torah and Prayer, which is what it means, go into the ark, into the text, into the words. So he's speaking about simply the idea of the letters of Torah and of prayer. But this, one second, it's actually from a book called all right, I'm not sure. I'm not sure where it appeared before. But it's so for the Baal Shem Tov, it's the letters of Torah or the letters of prayer. Now, this discourse that we're learning focuses on the letters of prayer, but it also speaks about the letters of Torah later on. So, but we can think about it in different ways. The discourse, this discourse we're studying, is mostly about prayer, and it's a matter of us how we think about prayer. There's our prayer that we ourselves pray, and you might say there's the prayer which is within the community. What kind of community is it? How does prayer figure in the life of the community? So that's what we will be trying to discuss together. So the path is, in order to be able to resist these waters of anxiety and of pressure, we should enter b'tevot hatfilah, the words of the prayer, the words of prayer in general, and the word and the Hebrew for word is Tevah, and that word also means ark. So Noah goes into the ark to be saved from the floods, and the individual goes into the word of Torah or Tefillah, or Torah study or prayer, in order to be saved from the flood of anxieties. Kevan shetfilah po'elet inyan ha'ava, because prayer prompts the idea of love. Prayer is really supposed to produce love within the person. Now there's a tract which the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Chabad Rebbe, wrote. He wrote one tract called Tract on Prayer and another tract called Kuntres Avodah, Tract on Service. And he says there, She'ikar Avodah, the main service of God, who inyan ha'ava, is the idea of love. Deleit pulchana k'pulchana derechimuta. There is no service of God, says the Zohar. That's why it's in Aramaic. There's no service of God like the service of love. V'hainu, that means she'inyan ha'yirah, fear, awe of God, which is also an important component, eino shaykh la'avodat hatfilah dafka. That fear is not something, fear of God doesn't relate specifically to prayer. And here's an interesting point. Shahara yirat tzricha v'yochola liyot kol hayam. Fear of God has to be, can be, and has to be the whole day long. Because all the time the person has to be very careful how they behave. If a person didn't have any kind of fear of God whatsoever, they would do anything. There would be nothing preventing them from doing negative things. All right, there's a social contract, they're afraid of getting caught, they don't want to be embarrassed, they don't want to have their name in the newspaper, they don't want to go to prison. But in order to really behave in a proper way, keeping away from all the possible negative situations, whether in thought, speech, or action, a person needs awe of God. Awe of God helps a person keep the 365 negative mitzvot. Don't do this and don't do that. Ve'ilu avodat hatfilah, but prayer, hi le'oreret inyan ha'ava. When it comes to a time to pray, now a person might pray for 5 minutes a day or for 2 hours a day or whatever it is. When it comes to the moment of prayer, then that is the moment to arouse love of God. And that is something that is relevant to all of us. Prayer is not just a matter of saying the words which are printed in the Hebrew prayer book. It's a very wonderful thing to be able to say those words. If a person can't say the Hebrew prayers, they can say the prayers in English. But it's not just a matter of saying the prayers. It's a matter of feeling love. Now, in order to feel love, one step to that is understanding something about what the prayer is saying. And the further step is to take that seriously and to emotionally respond to it so that the words of the prayer become our words. It's not just words that have been written down by the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah, the men of the Great Assembly, 2,500 years ago. That's our tradition. They are the ones who compiled the prayer book, more or less in the form it's in today, except that now there are various additions because of the destruction of the temple. But it's not just that. It's our prayer. They compose prayers so that we can pray to God, and those prayers can and should and hopefully will come from our hearts. That it's, as an old chassid, I've many times repeated this, I was researching what it means, contemplative prayer, and an old chassid said, "Apo veta mitanemes," a few words which are true. To be able to say a few words that are true, and those few words, they're in the text, which is in the prayer book. And the matter is, the challenge is to be able to say those words, at least some of them, mitanemes, with total truth. Now, prayer in that kind of way is something which can open our heart to love God and to feel love to God. And that's really the challenge to each of us. When we pray, is this love actually being revealed in our heart? And what is there? If the love isn't being revealed, what are we thinking about? Are we thinking about the words of the prayer? Well, so a person might be thinking about the word of the prayer, but they're just not, you can't say they're feeling a feeling of love. But it sometimes happens, as is mentioned in many Jewish books and is seen in many instances, the person is saying the words of the prayer, but he's thinking something else. And there's the story of the rabbi in the synagogue who, at the end of the Amidah, this important standing up prayer, he went over to one of the congregants and he said to him, "Shalom Aleichem, I'm so happy to see you back." So it, the point being that this congregant, during the prayer, he was thinking where he's going to go for his summer holidays, and this, should he go here, should he go there, the whole question, and the rabbi was somehow able to see that and says to him, "Welcome back, I'm so pleased you got back from Mexico or Spain or wherever it was that he was thinking of." Okay, now we turn back to the book Torah, which is the book of the teachings of Rabbi Shneur Zalman, edited.
Can I interrupt, Rebbe Tali, a moment?
Yes, Jeffrey, yes.
It opens up within us, and how does the Eibishter respond?
So we feel love to God, and there's love from God to us.
And it'll come back. Right, okay.
But
I was looking for something.
when a person feels love to God, we're actually not looking for something back. The fact that we feel love to God and that we can bond to God, that's the greatest thing in the world. That's worth everything. So it's not a matter, at that point we're not thinking about what God's giving us blessing or doing this or doing that for us. At that moment, we just want to be close to God. We want to gaze, spiritually gaze towards the infinite holiness of the divine.
Thank you.
You know, now mentioned in the discourse, it did say that there's the love of us to God and the love of God to us.
Yeah.
But when a person is actively trying to pray to God in a deep way, maybe spending quite a bit of time meditating, contemplating in order to feel that, he or she, it's taken for granted that God loves us. But he loves us, therefore he allows us to come close to him. Our coming close to God is the greatest gift that God can give us.
Cool. Thank you.
Any other comment by anyone else? Any question? No. Okay.
Because from what I understand, we were always taught, you know, we should do this, and the individual should do that, and we mustn't go there, we mustn't have this. But the idea, there's a concept that it's not what we want, it's what the Eibishter wants. So he wants us to come close.
Yeah. Yeah.
Regardless of what's going on. If we can come close, the water will knock away the blockage. Is that what's being said?
When you say what's going on, you mean the problems of life?
Yes.
Yeah.
So by us going closer to the Almighty,
look,
we push away the obstacles.
as I understand this discourse, that's we go to a point where we are not bothered by the problems of life, because at this moment we're thinking about God, and we are feeling a love of God, and the love pours through because of the problems of God, and because of the problems of life. The person is able to break through to a deeper love of God.
Right.
And the deeper love of God is the main thing. Whether the problem goes away or doesn't go away, that is a different issue. Yes, there's all kinds of teachings about having trust in God and different things in order to get rid of the problem. Reb Zusia was a person who had a lot of problems in life, unfortunately. Poverty, lots of other problems. And the students, his colleagues, were with their teacher, who was Rabbi Dov Ber, the Maggid of Mezrich, the person who became the successor to the Baal Shem Tov. And they came to a passage in the Talmud which said, just as a person blesses God when something good happens, we should bless God when something bad happens.
Right.
So that was very striking, and they discussed with their teacher, how can you actually do that in a real way to bless God when something bad happens? So he said, well, you know what? Go and visit Reb Zusia and he'll tell you. So they thought that makes good sense. We all know Reb Zusia has a lot of problems in life, so he'll be able to teach us how to bless God for the bad things. So they get in a carriage. This is in 1765, something like that. So they get in a carriage and they're traveling to Reb Zusia. They get there. Oh, he's so pleased to see them come in. Yes, that's wonderful. They see his hovel, very poor home, no proper furniture. And they tell him, our teacher sent us to you to ask, how do you bless God for bad things, when bad things happen to you? He said, I don't know why he sent you to me. Nothing bad ever happens to me. Thank God, I have a wonderful life. Everything's good. So he didn't see anything bad. So
Yes, yeah. He was above it. He was above the physical. He was living in a spiritual existence
yeah, Eve,
on a higher.
you want to say something? Eve, are you saying? No. Okay.
Can you hear me now? Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think you've been touching on the real problem here, because the problem is the unblocking. I mean, if you get to a point where you can't quite make that transition, you can't quite put aside the problems, or get to the point where you're really in the words, or I mean, you need I guess, as you say, the free gift from Hashem to help to get you there. But if he's not in the mood, then you're stuck, right?
If what?
If Hashem's not in the mood to pull you in.
Eve, it's we who have to be in the mood. Hashem's always in the mood. What you're saying is, if we imagine it to be the flood and the ark, Noah's ark, and the ark is the word of prayer or Torah study, how do we get into the ark? If we're in the swirling waters of the flood, how do we climb into the ark?
Right. I mean, sometimes you can do it. It's just easy, and you don't even notice it's an issue. You just sort of, float into the ark and float on the waters, and the waters become something else. They carry you somewhere. But sometimes, you can't do it even if you want to.
I think that's what these Hasidic teachings are about. Because when a person learns something like this, it just many people in Chabad, trying to put these teachings into practice. Before prayer, they study some piece of Hasidic teaching. And that piece of Hasidic teaching helps them climb into the ark.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, I'll try that.
Yes.
On the bad days.
Whether it's a page of Tanya or a discourse, something like that. It helps the person to reach a purer standpoint within themselves. And then it's easier to get out of the water into the ark.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you. I'm going to try that.
Okay.
If that doesn't work, I'm going to come and bother you again.
Okay, fine. Absolutely.
You want your money back.
I want another idea. I mean, he's saying that Hashem's always there and doesn't have moods. I want proof of that.
Okay. Umamshich b'Torah, and it continues in this text of Torah, this text by Rabbi Shneor Zalman. This is the mistake that's made by business people. Now, the society in the time of Rabbi Shneor Zalman, the society of his disciples, his followers, was basically divided in two. One group were the scholars who sat all day long studying Torah. How did they manage to do this? Maybe their wives ran a little shop or business of some kind, or their father-in-law was a man who was able to support them. And so the Torah scholars, that's one class, as it were, and they are the ones who are sitting, studying Torah, and that's most of their daily activity. On the other hand, there are the business people. So the business people are running around trying to make a living. They might have leased a forest somewhere, and they have the wood chopped down, and then they float it down the river. They get some people to help them, and they sell the wood in a city somewhere. So all kinds of businesses that they had. And so it's these two classes. So now he's talking. So Rabbi Shmuel Zalman, in this discourse that's being quoted here, he says this is the mistake of the business people. Shebedatam, in their opinion, she'ein yecholim litpalel kol kach. They're not able to pray with the same intensity and taking so long and so spiritually, kamo hayoshvei ohalim, like the people who dwell in tents. You see, there's the Baal Asakim, the people who are business. Asakim means business, even today in modern Hebrew. And Yoshvei Ohalim, the ones dwelling in tents, that is a phrase for the people who are dwelling in the tents of Torah and studying Torah all the time. So the business people think, if I was sitting in a study house studying Torah, then I would be able to pray. There wouldn't be anything disturbing me. I don't have to worry whether my non-Jewish business partner is cheating me or my Jewish partner is cheating me. And it's I wouldn't have those worries. I would just be sitting with a Talmud, with a book of Hasidic teaching, with the Zohar. Well, I wouldn't have any worries. And I'd be able then to really put myself into the prayer. But me, I have to get up early. I have to go to the fair where they're selling all the different things. I have to buy the right things. I have to try to get to the place where I'm going to sell it. Then I have these, possibly untrustworthy partners of different kinds, and who knows? And then there's someone who's trying to undercut me, and there's all kinds of worries. So how can I daven? How can I pray with real concentration? I have to get the prayer over quickly so that I can get out to work. And Rabbi Shmuel Zalman says, no, you're quite wrong. No, it's the other way around. It's the opposite. The business person who's got such problems is actually able to daven with more intensity than the rabbis sitting in this study house reading Talmud. Because there's more light, mitoch hachoshech dafka, comes specifically from the darkness. If it's a bright day, like the bright day of the Talmud scholar's life, and then you have an extra little light, which is his prayer, well, you don't notice this light. Doesn't mean very much. The whole day is pretty bright, and so you don't see this flame of love. But the business person, he is someone who's got such problems, such anxieties. When he prays, that can be a most tremendous, deep, passionate prayer. So, V'zel gam, we're going to discuss this in a minute. V'zel gam ma shekatuv b'Igeret HaKodesh. Now, Rabbi Shmuel Zalman in Tanya, in a section of Tanya which has letters by him, he says the same kind of thing. He says the following. We're going to see it. It's an interesting thing. You see, first of all, he's quoting something here, but before that quotation, Rabbi Shmuel Zalman says the following thing. During the days of the week, admittedly, the business person often has to run off and go to the market or whatever place of work he has to get to. So don't expect him then to lead the prayers in the long, slow way that Rabbi Shmuel Zalman wanted. He wanted that in the little shuls of his followers, and there were many followers scattered over White Russia at that point, and they had shuls in different places, what we would call a shtibel maybe. And he wanted the way of praying in the shtibel to be a lengthy, meaningful prayer. So the business person, he can come to the shtibel and he davens very quickly and he goes off. And I understand, says Rebbe Shlomo, you've got to go and make a living, that's fine. Whereas the person who is leading the prayers in the shtibel, in the Chabad shtibel in the 1790s or around 1800, something like that, he should be someone who is a person who dwells in tents, and therefore he is able to spend more time on the prayers and more time leading the prayers, so that there's a nice, slow, beautiful prayer service for everyone. But then he goes on to say, and here's the quote that we have here, Shabbatot v'yomim tovim, on Shabbat or on a festival, Shagam Baale Asakim Yesh Lam Pnai, when the business people are free, they're not going to go off to the market on Shabbat or Yom Tov. Hine Aleim Mutal Inyan Avodat HaTfilah, then they have the duty to pray in a deeper way, B'yeta Se'et V'yeta Az, much more than the people who spend their whole time in the study house. So now the business person, now it's his opportunity to really pray. So in other words, now he's got the opportunity, he should be praying in a lengthy way. Now, there's something that I wanted to share with you, and I'm just going to see if I can find it. Unfortunately, I was too rushed before to actually prepare it. 1 second. Okay, I found it. So now I'm going to share it. Help of Hashem. Right. Here we have a picture. You're able to see it, a painting?
Yep.
Lovely. Now, this is a painting by a painter called Zalman Kleiman, which depicts contemplative prayer. And it's a shul. This is actually a shul in Crown Heights. I'm told that it's the shul known as the Baumgarten Shul, which is in Crown Heights in Brooklyn. Although my understanding is that what you can see through the window looks a little bit like Kfar Chabad in Israel, so it's a kind of a mixture that the painter has succeeded in creating. And this painting is called Shabbos Afternoon. It's the afternoon of the Shabbat. Now, in this shul, in the morning, was the regular prayer service that everyone is used to. You know, everyone stands, sits, and says the prayers. There's a chazan leading the prayer, and most people are praying together, and they read the Torah. The women are presumably somewhere, like, you know, in an adjoining room, looking through a butler's hatch or something like that. So they're able to, with a curtain across it so that the men can't see the women, but the women can more or less see the men or see what's going on. So that's what happened in the morning. But now it's the afternoon. So most of the people have gone home. These people are the people who spend a long time praying. And they might be actually praying, like this one on the left. He seems to be praying. Maybe he's praying in a melodic way. Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha Oid Yalelucha Selo. Right? That's the kind of thing he might be doing. This one here, he seems to be in a very, very deep train of thoughts. He's thinking about a mystical Hasidic discourse, taking him deeper and deeper and deeper. And it could be if you spoke to this person, he wouldn't be able to hear you. He's just in another world, in a very spiritual world. And this person here, he's got his talit over his shoulder, which means he hasn't yet begun praying. And he's walking up and down. He's thinking. He's trying to get to the point where he can begin to pray. Now, this very lovely picture, in my view, was painted by the artist. Incidentally, there's always or often a little boy in the painting who is like the artist himself, watching what's going on. Now, there's another version of this painting, which I've never seen, but I've been told about. The clock, incidentally, here, we can't see the clock very well, but I think it's saying something like 10 to 2. So there's another version of this painting, which is like 3 hours later, like 10 to 5 on a summer's afternoon. And the shadows are much longer. And everyone is gone except for this man who's the one who's got his talit over his shoulder in this picture. And in the second version, he's still got his talit over his shoulder. He's still pacing up and down. He's still thinking, because he wants to get to the inner point of his heart so that when he prays, finally, it's going to be a few words of truth, right? So that's an illustration of what we're talking about in Rabbi Shmuel Zalman's terms and the Rebbe's terms, what he is actually asking the community to do. Now, it's a kind of minority dimension, but it's an important minority. Is one going to have a shul where everyone prays, they come to shul, let's say 9 o'clock, and they finish by 11:30 and they go home? I'm talking about a Shabbat morning. That's the end of it. Or is it a shul where they come at 9 o'clock and they study Hasidic teachings, and then they begin praying at 10 o'clock, and then they finish at 12:30, but there are these people left, so that when it comes to 10 to 2, there's still a few people in the synagogue praying, right? It's like two kinds of shul. And in terms of a Chabad shul, this is what a Chabad shul is supposed to be like. Now, the problem is not every Chabad shul is like that. Many are like the 9 to 11:30 style, or 10 to 12:30, but without this extra layer. And the head of Chabad in England, Rabbi Sudak, or Rabbi Shalom, Nachman Sudak, he used to have frequent conversations with the Rebbe's secretary, Rabbi Chodakov, by phone. And there would be a phone call from Rabbi Chodakov, and along, it was basically a monologue, Rabbi Chodakov giving him various instructions, and Rabbi Sudak would record the call, and then he would type out in Hebrew what Rabbi Chodakov had said. And one of the things he said, which Rabbi Sudak shared with me, was there needs to be this kind of image in a Lubavitch shul. Maybe not. Here we have how many? Five contemplatives, maybe a smaller number, but 2 or 3. You need a few people who are going to pray long in order to give the shul the proper atmosphere of a Chabad shul. It was a very interesting statement, and indeed, the synagogue here, the Lubavitch synagogue in Stamford Hill, is exactly like that. And maybe Jeremy, the shul in Kingsley Way, is like that. Is that so? I hope so.
At times, yeah.
Okay, lovely.
Yeah, thank you.
Lovely. So, so that's the challenge. So that is what this discourse is actually talking about. Yes, so it's talking about this sort of contemplative prayer, which might be something we do. It might be something a woman does in her own home, praying, but praying with a certain intensity, awaking that intensity in one's heart. Incidentally, one of the ways to reach that intensity, and this is partly an answer to you, Eve, I was told by a great chassid who davened very beautifully. He told me the way to daven in this sort of way is melody. When you say the words of the prayer to a melody. And he says there are two approaches to this. One is that you take one phrase from the melody and you say the words of the prayer to that phrase, saying the phrase again and again. For example, there was a great mashpia, a great chassid in Montreal, and he would pray like this. This was the melody. Ah, yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Ah, yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So he would pray with that phrase again and again. And his prayer was very, very deep. Another way is that you take one melody and you just go with that melody. So there's a melody, Essen esst sich, eating eats by itself. It's a kind of simple, plaintive melody that we have the desire to eat and the desire to sleep, but we don't have a desire to pray or a desire to learn Torah in the same way. Our physical body wants to eat, wants to drink, wants to sleep, but do we have any element inside us pulling us that we want to pray, we want to learn Torah? So the melody goes like this, just without the words. Ya ya yom ba, ya ya yom ba, ya ya yo, ya ya ba. Aya yumba ya ya humba aya ya 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 aya yumba aya yum aya ya 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 ya. Now the Loewenthal Rebbe told someone I know when he prays he should pray with that melody. So that is a way of getting into the art.
Isn't that something that Shlomo, the first one, didn't Shlomo Carlebach do something like that?
Well, Shlomo created this, Carlebach style prayer service where everything has a strong melody. The difference is that Shlomo created it as a communal experience. The whole community at the same time is singing the same melody. And they are, singing through the davening together in this, very enthusiastic way. Whereas this, the kind of style which is depicted in the painting, and which is the more normal Chabad style, is that each individual is singing his or her own melody. It's much more individualistic.
But his songs do repeat the same line again and again and again. And so they're sort of meditation on a single verse.
Okay, well, I don't know his songs well enough to be able to comment on that. I've heard his melody, but I've never analyzed them in that way. Maybe you're right. I don't know. I mean, any piece of music very often has a refrain and it's built around a certain melody. But that could be, that. But you see, I would imagine his melodies extemporized. They start with a simple melody. I'm just imagining this because I don't really know his songs. They start with a melody, and then there's a kind of improvisation on the melody. You know, it's like it takes it to a further dimension, and then a further dimension from there. Whereas here, it's more that the Chassid is not focusing on the melody. The Chassid is focusing on God. And the melody is just a way of getting the door open.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. I hear you. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, presumably you have to have a voice, but that's something else to try. Yeah, it's interesting. It's also interesting when you, it's a way of understanding what you see or hear around you.
All right.
I mean, especially if you're a woman, you know, you're not into that, are you? I mean, you are praying at home usually, or more in your own space, communally.
Well, I mean, that's the positive thing there. You're praying at home, and you know, unless you know you've got neighbors who are going to be bothered, you can sing away.
Yeah, that's right. Sing away. Yeah. That's funny. Yeah. Yeah, that's very helpful. It's interesting. Yeah. Thank you.
Lovely. Okay. Now let's see. Go a little bit further. Right. So now the Rebbe takes this a little bit further. You see, he's quoted from Torah, from Rabbi Shneur Zalman, that the business person, when he's got the time to pray, he should really put himself into it. And that is usually Shabbat. Umuvan, this is line 20. Umuvan, and it's understood. שבכדי שתוכל להיות עבודת התפילה בשבתות ויומים טובים, in order that there should be intense prayer on Shabbat and Yom Tov, בהכרח שתהיה עבודה זו גם בימי החול. You have to also have it in the week. שהרי דווקא מי שטרח בערב שבת יאכל בשבת. In order to have food on Shabbat, you have to somehow work for it during the week. So just as that applies to eating on Shabbat, also on the prayers of Shabbat. Because so in other words, there has to be some kind of activity during the week in terms of prayer. Now, it's understood, says the Rebbe, that they don't have enough time during the week. But the main thing is the kavanah. The main thing is the kavanah, the intention, what's in one's mind. And tov ma'at the kavanah, and there's a famous saying, better a little with the right intention, the right focusing, and then the Rebbe is sort of pushing it that they should try and squeeze a little bit extra time. But I think that you see, it's possible to understand that even if you've got a very short time, that short time can be with a very strong focus and a very strong intensity. Now, there's a story of the Rebbe. He was a young man. He and his wife, they were living in Paris. This is in the 1930s. And many people didn't know him. He was the son-in-law of the previous Rebbe, so some people knew them, others didn't. So he once went into a synagogue, and he said to the rabbi, could you possibly lend me a talit? And the rabbi had a spare talit, and he lent it to him. And the Rebbe davened very, very quickly. I assumed the Rebbe had his own fill-in with him, something like that. He davened very quickly, in about 15 minutes, which is extremely quickly. And then he gave back the talit. He was about to give back the talit to the rabbi who'd lent it to him. And the rabbi, who didn't know him at all, thought, what a low person. He davens in 15 minutes. I shouldn't really have lent him my talit at all. He was thinking that sort of grumpily. And then he took the talit from the Rebbe, and it was soaked with sweat. He davened in 15 minutes, but with such an intensity that the talit was soaked with sweat. So we can, even if we have to, run away, we've got to, get to teach or whatever it is we have to do. It can be a few moments of intensity. So that's another point over here. Now we're going to then the Rebbe talks about the people who are studying Torah all the time, how it's important for them to make sure that they are also praying in this deep and lengthy way. But let's just consider the idea of study of Torah. Now here we can add. Now the phrasing is in this discourse, Baalei Asakim, the people of business people. Now the word business is here in the plural. Esek is the singular and Asakim is the plural. And also Yoshvei Ohalim, the dwellers in tents, and the tents are in plural as well. So he's now discussing this fact that it's in the plural. When we're talking about the business people, they are dealing with the Reshut HaRabim, the public thoroughfare, the Turei de Fruda, the separate mountains of the world, the worldlessness, of the world of worldliness, and that's why we might call them Baalei Asakim, the people who have multiple affairs. But those who dwell in the tents, which means the tents of Torah, the Torah is surely one. Why is it say, and the Torah is Achdut, is oneness? Why does it say Ohalim in the plural? Why does it say tents in the plural? And then he quotes that there's a phrase, a verse in the Torah, V'Yaakov ish tam yoshev ohalim. Jacob was a pure man dwelling in tents. The sages said this means ohalo shel Shem, the tent of Shem and the tent of Aver. Now, Shem and Aver are two of the ancestors of Jacob. Shem is one of the sons of Noah. Right, there's a little story about Noah being uncovered in his tent, and Shem, his son, covers him, unlike another son or grandson who makes fun of him or worse. So Shem is a son of Noah, and Shem is the ancestor of the Jewish people. And it's from Shem we get the word Semite, that we are Semites coming from Shem. And the grandson of Shem is Aver. Now, the Rebbe then explains that Shem and Aver, that represents the written Torah and the oral Torah. Why? Because the tent of Shem, that's talking about the written Torah, because as Nachmanides says, the whole Torah is names of the divine, the written Torah. So Nachmanides writes in his introduction to his commentary on the Torah that the whole Torah is really names of God, and that's why the tent of Shem, and Shem means name, that's why that is referring to the written Torah. And then there's the word Aver, and so the Rabbi Shlomo Zalman's discourse explains this in terms of another verse in the book of Kings, that there is a prophet who comes to us, over aleinu, he passes by. And what does that mean? That is the drawing down of a revelation. I think here is a misprint in the text. The revelation of the oral Torah. Maybe it's not a misprint. It's the oral Torah which reveals what is inside the written Torah. So therefore, we have these two dimensions of Torah as well. So there's the business people, they have to pray in a deeper way, and there's also the people studying Torah. And the Torah has two different dimensions, because there's the written Torah, which is mostly the letters of the Torah, and then there's the oral Torah, where the issue is not so much the letters, because in fact, when a person studies the oral Torah, how do you show that he understands it properly? By the fact that he can say it over in his own words. And at the same time, you need to remember what was originally written in the actual text, because there's more concealed in that text as well. And so therefore, he goes on to say that both those who only study Torah in a very simple way, like they only study the written Torah, nothing beyond that, and those who study the oral Torah, which might be in a very complicated way, nonetheless, they are both able to study Hasidic teachings, and those Hasidic teachings help them, as we discovered before, help them get into the Word, get away from the storming waters of the flood, and feel this sense of love for the divine, connecting them to the divine in a beautiful way. So that is the basic teaching of this discourse. Said in 1964, and later published in Likutei Sichot, Volume 5. So I wish you all a very good evening and a very good week.
Thank you. Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for that.